dungeon, where our protagonist Ryota suddenly wakes up, startling Emily, a girl who was examining him. She wonders if he is really human, questioning why a slime would drop a human, since they usually only drop bean sprouts. Ryota is confused by what she's saying, and Emily introduces herself and decides to show him what she meant, fighting a slime that takes half of her HP, but she crushes the slime with her giant hammer, leaving it lifeless. When the slime disappears, it drops a bunch of bean sprouts, and Ryota is confused. Emily explains that they're on the first floor of a dungeon called Telo Nu, and that slimes on this level always drop bean sprouts. In fact, everything in this world is something that drops from a monster. And as they continue walking through the maze, Ryota starts to wonder if he's still on Earth. Emily then kills another slime, and Ryota asks why she doesn't fight other types of monsters. Emily replies that there are only slimes on the first floor, and that she's too weak to go to the second. She takes him to a status board, which she explains is able to show a person's stats. We then see that Emily is only level 3, and her stats seem pretty low. Ryota thinks all of this feels like a video game, and he notices there's a second page. Emily explains that the second page shows the drop stats, and it determines how many items a person gets when killing certain types of monsters. We can see that all of her item drop stats are ranked F, but the amount of plant items she gets is rank E, and that's why she's farming bean sprouts. Ryota decides to check his own stats, but gets really disappointed when he sees they're all rank F, and his level is stuck at 1. Then, he checks the second page and sees that all his drop stats are rank S. Emily thinks his stats are terrible, since S comes after many letters in the alphabet. But Ryota explains that in games, S is usually the highest rank, so he decides to test this in practice. He looks for a weapon, and Emily offers her hammer, but it's too heavy for him, so she gives him a bamboo spear instead, and a slime approaches them. Ryota fights it, and in the end, he manages to defeat the monster. The slime drops a bunch of bean sprouts, and Emily can't believe it, since she's never seen such a huge drop amount, which lets Ryota confirm his suspicions. Suddenly, Ryota's stomach growls, and Emily decides to cook something for him. She's cooking some of the bean sprouts they collected. Ryota thinks her food is delicious, and devours everything eagerly. She gives him a cup of soup to try, but gets scared when he starts crying. She thinks it might have been because of the soup, but Ryota assures her it was really good. What happened was that he ended up remembering his past life. Ryota remembers how he worked non-stop, eating only cold convenience store food, until eventually he worked so much he got too tired, and the last thing he remembers is waking up there, in that new world. Emily then hugs him, comforting him, and says all his efforts will be worth it someday. Ryota thanks her and says he'll look for a place to stay. Then, Emily mentions a city where they can find lodging. Soon after, Ryota finds out that Emily sleeps in the dungeon because she can't afford to pay for a place of her own. Even so, she gives him the bamboo spear when he leaves. Ryota arrives in the city and starts learning more about that world. He discovers the currency is called pilos, and then sells the sprouts he got for 200 pilos. He understands that an average meal costs about 500 pilos, and a night of lodging is 2,000. So he starts killing slimes in the dungeon, trading all the bean sprouts he gets for money. After 3 days, he comes back and takes Emily to a house he rented. The house is a bit rundown, needing some care, but Ryota gives Emily the key and says she can live there now. We find out that the rent costs about 20,000 pilos a month, and Emily panics. But Ryota calms her down, saying he'll pay the rent. Emily doesn't accept that, but Ryota says it's his way of thanking her for the soup she made for him. Then she notices the calluses on his hands, the bags under his eyes, and invites Ryota to live with her, saying she wants to keep cooking for him. Ryota goes to exchange the bean sprouts at the Swallow's Gratitude, a place to sell and take quests. And Erza, the lady at the counter, is shocked by the huge amount he brought. Ryota tells her he wants to go to the dungeon's second floor to get better drops. Erza explains that on that floor, the monsters drop carrots. She also mentions that a new dungeon called Nihonium has appeared, and that the Neptune group, the strongest in Secro, is investigating the place. As Ryota is leaving, Erza even tries to ask him out, but he ends up rejecting her. Ryota returns home and is surprised to see everything completely clean and tidy. Emily brings him a warm towel and a cup of tea. Ryota asks her to take a break, but she says she enjoys the work, so he mentions the new dungeon to her, Nihonium. Emily says she's heard of that dungeon, but that it's useless, because nothing drops there. Ryota then decides to check it out himself. He walks through an area that looks a lot like a cave, and a skeleton appears. He tries to attack, but misses, hitting a column to the side and smashing it. Ryota attacks again, but his spear gets stuck in the skeleton's ribs. Luckily, a column behind the skeleton falls on it, so Ryota stabs repeatedly while the skeleton is pinned down. The skeleton drops a glowing seed, and when Ryota picks it up, he hears a voice saying that his HP has increased. Ryota and Emily check the status board and are shocked to see that his HP has risen to rank C. Emily gets really excited, and Ryota heads out to kill more skeletons, bringing Emily along with him. They discover that Emily's kills don't drop any seeds, and she also can't pick up seeds from Ryota's kills. Ryota then thinks this dungeon only increases stats for those with S-rank drops. At home during dinner, Ryota tells Emily about his plan. He plans to head to the second floor of Tululu, that starter dungeon. Emily gets worried and asks him not to be reckless, so he promises to come back by nightfall. In the dungeon, Ryota fights level 2 slimes. The slime hits him, but he barely takes damage thanks to his new S-rank HP. He kills a monster that drops a giant carrot. Another slime approaches to attack, but before it can, it gets killed by a fireball. This one also drops a carrot, though it's smaller than the previous one. Then 3 men suddenly show up to grab the carrot and mock Ryota, even using a device on him since he's still only level 1. After that, they leave. Ryota gets very annoyed, and suddenly a girl appears behind him. She's wearing a strange outfit and has bunny ears. She asks if Ryota is really level 1, slaps him on the head, and says she hates low levels. But Ryota takes no damage at all, which shocks her a bit. Then, confused, she just leaves. Back home, Emily is amazed by the size of the carrots. Ryota tells her he earned 8,000 pylos at the gratitude of the swallow, and he thinks he's going to get rich off this. Suddenly, someone knocks on the door. It's the same girl from before. She slaps Ryota on the head again, repeating how she hates low levels. But Ryota doesn't react, and Eve starts acting very strangely, suddenly confessing that she loves him. Emily stares, confused, and asks who this girl is. Eve slaps Ryota again. Still no reaction. Then she grabs a random passerby near the door, does the same thing, but the guy instantly passes out. She doesn't understand why Ryota is unaffected, and he figures it must be because of his S-rank HP. Ryota asks why she came, and Eve pulls a huge carrot out of her dress. Don't ask how she managed to hide it in there. Anyway, Ryota remembers dropping a carrot earlier, and Eve must have picked it up. She says she wants to stay, and gets super excited when she sees all the carrots around the house. Emily asks if she wants to eat with them, and begins showing how to make carrot pasta with carrot sauce, and even carrot soup. Eve starts drooling over all the food. During the meal, Eve praises Emily's cooking skills, and once they finish eating, she just leaves. Later, Ryota is cautiously exploring the second floor of Nihonium, focused on getting stronger. Suddenly, a zombie appears. Ryota attacks, but ends up breaking his bamboo spear. Even so, he keeps fighting with punches and kicks until the zombie dies, then picks up the seed it drops. Right after, he hears that same strange voice again, saying his strength has increased by 1 point, but then another voice interrupts. Ryota looks up and sees that Eve had been watching him the whole time. She jumps down and slaps him again, asking about the drop. Ryota doesn't want her to find out that he's S-rank in drop rate, so he decides to hide that information. Eve asks if he has more carrots. He says no. She says she wants to go to Tululu to get more carrots, but Ryota tells her to wait for the gratitude of the swallow. She agrees and leaves. After that, Ryota arrives at the gratitude of the swallow, carrying a mountain of carrots. He walks up to Eve as a crowd gathers around them. He hands her a carrot, and the crowd is shocked as they watch Eve chew it with overwhelming excitement. Erza approaches Ryota and immediately offers to buy all his carrots for double the retail price. She explains that the girl's name is Eve, and she's a famous adventurer who has a technique called Scalibur, capable of slicing a stone in half. She's also a carrot expert. Any carrot she eats skyrockets in value. Erza offers 15,000 pilos for each carrot. Ryota is shocked and tries to thank Eve, but she just asks for more carrots. He says he has none left, and she tries to slap him again, but he stops her. Eve keeps asking for more carrots, so Ryota promises to get more for her tomorrow, which makes her a little grumpy, but she eventually leaves. On the second floor of Tululu, Ryota and Emily check the rooms, and Ryota decides to take another look inside the dungeon. He hears something as he turns a corner and finds 2 adventurers struggling to kill a slime. They're exhausted, but then their captain shows up, and they quickly pin the slime down so the old man can finish it and take the carrot drop. Afterward, they move on. The adventurers want to rest, but the old man scolds them for being weak. He says he's strict because he wants them to grow stronger. They follow their captain, and Ryota recalls having a boss in his past life who overworked him under the excuse of, "It's for your own good." Emily comes over with a lunchbox. They decide to take a break, and while preparing lunch, Eve suddenly runs up, super excited to eat Emily's food. They all enjoy a happy lunch together, but then Ryota hears someone talking. It's that same group again, and the captain is glaring at them, telling his team never to be lazy like those three. He says drop quality depends on effort, but Eve walks over and tells them to just eat carrots. She cuts them in half and sticks them in their mouths, and they start chewing while Eve tells the captain that carrots taste great, even without hard work. The captain gets furious and starts getting ready to attack, but Eve stops him, and the old man leaves with his team. Back at the Gratitude of the Swallow, Ryota tells Ersa they couldn't carry all the items, and she suggests he get a magic cart to help him transport everything. They arrive at a shop where they are greeted by a girl at the counter. She calls for her father, who is an elderly man that comes out from the back. He recommends a magic cart with a monster detection system, and they get interested in buying it, but are surprised to learn that it costs 10 million pylos, and that the other carts in the shop also cost in the millions, so they get discouraged and leave without buying any cart. Suddenly they hear a commotion, and people start yelling that there is a lost one. Emily explains that a lost one is a monster that appears when drops are left in places where there are not many people around. Ryota looks up and sees a giant gorilla running through the city, with many people running away, including adventurers. Emily tells him that those lost ones do not drop anything, so adventurers do not even try to fight them. Ryota hears a scream and sees Erza lying on the ground as the gorilla punches her. Immediately, Ryota jumps in and manages to stop the gorilla's fist. Right after that, Ivy appears with a group of adventurers to join the fight. Ryota tells Erza that he will deal with the lost one, and rushes at the gorilla. The gorilla is about to throw a rock, but Emily shows up and smashes the rock with her hammer. Meanwhile, the adventurers attack the gorilla's limbs. Ryota charges forward and headbutts the monster, then lands the final blow. The people around applaud Ryota for saving the city, and he is really happy to finally be recognized. Suddenly he hears the sound of a drop hitting the ground, and goes to investigate with the group. They discover that the monster dropped a pistol, and Ryota is shocked to find a weapon like that, which should not even exist in that world. Outside Nihonium, Ryota checks his status, and sees that his strength went up to rank C thanks to the drops. He enters Nihonium again, now with the pistol in hand, and shoots the zombies that come near him. The first shot blows up the monster's shoulder, and the second finishes it off. Ryota confirms that the weapon really works, because right after that, several zombies rush at him, and he shoots them all down with ease. But he starts to worry about how he is going to get more bullets, so he decides to use them sparingly. In Tilulu, a slime jumps at Emily, but Ryota pulls out the pistol and kills the creature mid-air. Emily is super happy to see him, and they sit down to eat lunch together. She admires his new weapon, and he says he is planning to explore the next floor. They notice that Eve did not show up for lunch, so they think she must be busy. They enter the third floor, and Emily comments that the monsters in that area are Kokro slimes, which drop pumpkins. They go looking for those slimes, and Ryota sees some of them running along the walls. He notices they look a lot like cockroaches, and is instantly disgusted by those creatures. He hears a loud thump when Emily hits the ground with her hammer. She shows a scary smile, saying she wants to kill all the slimes. Emily brutally kills one of them, and they take the pumpkin it dropped. Ryota suggests going back to get more carrots, because they definitely do not want to see Emily's scary side again. But on the way, they end up finding another swarm of Kokro slimes, which push Emily back, and she completely loses it when she sees that. Ryota says he will handle it, and starts shooting the monsters, asking Emily not to lose her head. He defeats the monsters, and the pair tries to figure out how they are going to carry all those giant pumpkins that the creatures drop. But Emily starts acting strange again, obsessed with killing Kokro slimes. Suddenly, an explosion at the entrance sends Ryota flying with his pumpkins. Eve shows up to get her daily carrots, and Emily offers her a backpack full of them, while Ryota feels relieved. They trade the pumpkins at the Gratitude of the Swallow, and go back to pick up the pumpkin peels they had left behind. But when they get there, they find everything half-eaten on the ground. Ryota thinks maybe a small animal took them, but Emily already suspects it was the Kokro slimes. She smashes one of the ruined pumpkins, and suddenly a swarm of Kokro slimes comes out of it. Now Emily starts going completely crazy, and Ryota is terrified of what she might become. He quickly pulls out his gun and starts firing at the monsters, until he runs out of bullets. He asks Emily to be patient and promises that he will kill them all as he starts smashing them with his own hands. In the end, Ryota manages to kill them all. Emily apologizes for freaking out like that, but suddenly, Ryota hears several bells, and they realize the monsters dropped more ammunition. When they arrive at the gratitude of the swallow, Ez explains that those stray bullets appear when a drop is left unsupervised outside a dungeon. Ryota starts thinking that maybe it's possible to force the appearance of lost monsters and kill them to get more bullets. He becomes thoughtful with his ideas, while Erza tries to invite him out, but Ryota just thanks her and runs off. He goes to do an experiment, leaves a carrot outside, and waits for a monster to appear. But who shows up is Eve, who immediately eats the carrot. Ryota tries again, and this time a slime appears. He kills the slime instantly, and it drops more bullets. Ryota is pleased, since the experiment worked, so he starts wondering what would happen if he did that with seeds. In Nihonium, no matter what Ryota does, the seeds just vanish from his hands. He was hoping that something different would happen because of his unique skill, but nothing happens, and he feels a bit disappointed. And just as he's about to leave, out of nowhere, a skeleton appears and catches Ryota completely off guard. He fights the skeleton and manages to kick the creature out of the entrance. Ryota thinks the skeleton might turn into a lost monster, but it simply disappears. Back at the gratitude of the swallow, Erza explains to Ryota that monsters disappear if they leave the dungeon, and that even inside the dungeon they can't move between floors. Erza blushes, trying to praise Ryota, but he interrupts her and runs off. He returns to Nihonium and waits at the entrance to test a new idea. The skeleton approaches him, and Ryota throws it outside, but this time he quickly shoots it before it disappears, and a mysterious voice tells him he has obtained a freezing bullet. Ryota tests the new bullet on a tree, and it instantly becomes encased in ice. In Telulu, Ryota tests the freezing bullet on a slime, freezing it just before Emily finishes it off. Emily asks him about the bullet, and Ryota explains that it's hard to get, so he can't use it too often. Ryota and Emily are walking on a trail along a mountain slope when they come across two people arguing. A man asks Ryota to retrieve a cargo that fell off a cliff, and the woman warns that the cargo was left unsupervised, so lost monsters might start reproducing. He creates a fireball and prepares to burn the cargo, but the man stops her, saying the perfume inside is worth a fortune. They begin to argue, and the old man tries to hit the woman but misses and punches the wall, leaving a mark. Ryota and Emily are shocked, but the woman explains that a monster called Femini just possessed the man. She explains that this monster uses a human body as a host to multiply. Meanwhile, Ryota shoots the monster and frees the man, who ends up unconscious. The woman tells them to take the man and run away as fast as they can, because more Femini will show up because of the cargo. She prepares to sacrifice herself to buy them enough time to escape, saying it's her responsibility as a companion. Ryota then remembers a time when a coworker made a small mistake, and their boss just laughed at his misfortune. Even though Ryota wanted to help, the coworker thought it was his responsibility alone, so Ryota didn't do anything. Now Ryota wants to help the woman, so he uses the freezing bullet to freeze the enemies, while Emily destroys them all with a single blow. In the end, the woman thanks Ryota for saving her. Later that night, they check Emily's stats, which improved drastically after she defeated the Femini. Emily thanks Ryota, saying good things will keep happening to her as long as they stay together. But Ryota thinks that actually he's the one benefiting more from all of this. After that, they return to the dungeon, where they encounter a new monster. Ryota defeats it, and it drops a necklace. He wants Emily to wear the necklace, and reveals that it has the effect of doubling the amount of loot dropped by monsters, so Emily can earn even more money with it. Wearing the necklace, she defeats a group of bat monsters, and they drop far more items than before. Back at the house where they live, Ryota considers moving. He comments that they're now earning enough money to afford a better place. He knows it'll take some time to save up, but Emily tells him not to overwork himself. We see Ryota at the gratitude of the swallow, trying to sell bamboo shoots. But Erza says it's hard to assess how much they're really worth. Then a girl shows up and asks Ryota if she can eat one of the shoots. He agrees. She cuts the shoot right there, tastes a piece, and says the flavor is great, even raw. So she decides she wants to buy all of Ryota's shoots. Ryota agrees, and the girl says she can't really set a fixed price for the item, but she wants to pay something as a token of appreciation. Only afterward does Ryota realize that the girl just paid 20,000 pilos for the bamboo shoots, an extremely high price for that kind of item, yet he still seems a bit disappointed with the amount. But then comes the twist. Erza explains that the girl is actually Massey, a gastronome, which means everything she tastes instantly becomes something of high value. So Urza wants Ryota to sign an exclusivity contract with them, since she believes the bamboo shoots will become the trending topic of the century. That's why she wants the sales rights, as if it were a trademarked product. Urza even offers to pay a bonus on top of the item's price, and Ryota agrees, saying he's really happy to form this partnership with her. After that, Ryota returns to the Nihonium dungeon, and there he sees a skeleton approaching a princess named Margaret. He gets ready to help, but Margaret's companions show up and defeat the monster. A magic cart stores the skeleton's head, while one of the companions tells Ryota she's using an air box. He explains that monsters in Nihonium release air, so they store that air inside these boxes. The air boxes are sold, and since they're made by Princess Margaret, they've become her main product. He tells Ryota that the magic cart lets them carry more and more air boxes at once, which helps reduce the number of trips. Ryota returns home and tells Emily that he wants a magic cart, but he knows it'll be expensive, so he's torn between buying a new house or the magic cart first. Emily thinks they should buy the magic cart, since that will help them save more money for a house. Ryota agrees with her, so they decide to get the magic cart first. The next day they go to the shop, but they find a girl crying and ask what happened. She reveals that her father hasn't come back yet, and he had gone out to buy flowers. Emily quickly realizes that the only place where one could get flowers is a dungeon called Arsenic, so the two decide to take a look there. They enter the dungeon and quickly run into a monster blocking the path. Ryota tries to shoot it, but the bullet ricochets. Emily tells him to step aside, then charges in with her hammer and instantly defeats the monsters. They go deeper and deeper into the dungeon and find a shopkeeper lying on the ground. Ryota asks if he's okay, but it seems like he's just sleeping. They try to wake him, but he doesn't respond, so Emily smashes the floor with her hammer, and the noise wakes him up. Ryota asks what he's doing there, saying his daughter is really worried. The man reveals he's buying parts for a new magic cart, and that he's already gathered almost everything. He's just missing a few light stones. He points to a floating stone and explains that light stones are lighter than air, so he can't grab one himself. Ryota says it's hard to do that alone, but maybe two people could manage. So he lifts Emily, who struggles a bit because of the weight of her hammer. Even so, with her S-rank strength, she manages to smack the floating stone and knock it down. The stone drops a blue rose, exactly what the shopkeeper needed. They leave the dungeon, and the man places the rose on the ground, waiting for it to turn into a lost item. Emily knows that once it starts floating, it'll be impossible to catch, so the shopkeeper needs to grab it before it flies off. The rose transforms into a light stone and immediately starts to float. The shopkeeper chases after it but can't reach it. However, Ryota fires a freezing bullet, making the rose fall to the ground just in time for the shopkeeper to grab it. They return to the shop, where the man finishes building his magic cart and tells them to take it with them. Ryota doesn't want to accept such an expensive gift, but the shopkeeper reminds him that he saved the city from the gorilla, so he deserves some kind of reward. Ryota accepts the gift. They use the cart to store all the bamboo shoots. When the cart is full, Ryota takes the shoots to Urza, but he sees a man arguing with her. The man demands more payment for the products he's selling, claiming his items are worth more than 10,000 pilos. But Urza says she can't pay more than 8,400. The man tries to attack her, but Ryota freezes his arm, telling him to stop because Urza wouldn't lie about the price. Ryota removes the man's goods from his cart and brings them to the counter, placing the items and explaining that the cart automatically calculates the sales value. The cart then displays 8,400 pilos. The man accuses Ryota of conspiring with Urza and breaks the ice on his arm, preparing to attack. But Ryota easily blocks him with a single slap. Urza thanks Ryota for that, saying that as a merchant, she wants people to feel comfortable bringing their goods to her. But she's starting to feel like she can't do it alone. Ryota tells her it's okay. He agrees to help her. After all, she helped him by buying his items, so now he wants to protect her in return. Suddenly, Urza kisses him, making him blush all over. She says that was her personal kiss, and she wants him to remember it. Ryota and Emily then return to Telulu, where they hunt bats to gather more bamboo shoots. Ryota is happy because now they can earn 200,000 pilos in a single trip with the cart. That's 10 times more than they used to make. Now they have enough money to buy a new house, so they return home and start packing, but begin to feel a little sad because they have so many good memories there. They decide to keep renting the place, so they can always come back whenever they want. The next day we see them in their new home, while Emily prepares breakfast. Ryota wakes up and is surprised to see Eve, asking how she got there. Emily says that's not really a problem, since she made plenty of food. so they all sit down together enjoying their time in the new house. Ryota returns to the first level of Nihonium, where he uses his weapon to kill mummies, but he realizes he's out of ammo. He picks up a glowing seed from the monster, and a voice says his speed has increased. Suddenly, a mummy approaches from behind, so he fights it, pushing it back and kicking it away. He's surprised to see that his attack cut the mummy in half. Then he remembers he has S-rank strength, so he can handle monsters even without a weapon. At the swallow's gratitude, a man named Neptune suddenly sits down with him. Ryota asks what he wants, and Neptune says he wants to arm wrestle with Ryota, saying he's interested in his strength. He heard Ryota defeated a man with just a slap. He challenges Ryota to a match, and his confidence makes Ryota nervous, but he accepts. The arm wrestling match begins, and Ryota immediately realizes Neptune is very strong. Ryota fights hard, but ends up winning, surprising everyone around. Ryota remembers that Urza had already told him about Neptune, saying he's the leader of the most powerful organization in Secro. Neptune asks for a rematch, but Ryota declines, saying they've already caused a scene. Suddenly, Neptune stands up and tries to punch Ryota, who quickly counters and knocks him back. Neptune gets up right away, saying he likes Ryota and wants him to join his family. But Ryota refuses. Back at their house, Ryota tells Emily he's not interested in joining any group because he's already enjoying his life to the fullest with her. Emily is impressed that Neptune sought him out, thinking it must be because Ryota has helped so many people. She ends up calling him a hero, but he accepts. Ryota returns to Nihonium, where he meets Margaret's companion, who tells him about the company's latest product, a Pandora's box, which automatically stores dropped items and displays the face of the person who found them. He-Man gives Ryota a few of these boxes, telling him to inform his friends about it. At first he refuses, but then he thinks of a good way to use them. Outside the dungeon, we learn that Ryota used the box to store the seeds. He places it on the ground, causing the lost skeletons to appear, and he immediately defeats them. This allows him to easily collect freezing bullets. Emily is about to enter the dungeon with her magic cart when she runs into Ryota, who is repeating the process with items dropped by other monsters. A mummy and a zombie appear, and he quickly eliminates them, causing 2 special bullets to appear. Ryota picks up the red bullet, as the voice tells him he has acquired a fire bullet. Then he picks up the white bullet and immediately realizes it's very useful, so he thinks about collecting more. By repeating the process, he gains many special bullets, but when he is about to open the last box, he suddenly feels a strong chill. Emily tells him that a magic storm is coming, so he returns to Urza, who explains that a magic storm is a very rare phenomenon, and that no one will be able to use magic. Urza reveals that its effects can even reach the dungeons, so adventurers who use magic should take the day off. At that moment, a man named Race enters the building asking for help, because his partner Rosa was left behind in Silicon, a dungeon meant for magic users. Race goes around begging for help, but none of the adventurers want to assist him, so he falls to his knees, while Ryota wonders why no one wants to help. Neptune suddenly appears, telling Ryota that the monsters in Silicon are so dangerous, even he won't go near them. Urza then reveals that the monsters in the dungeon are immune to non-magical attacks, so Neptune thinks there's nothing that can be done. However, Ryota approaches Race and tells him that he'll go look for Rosa, who seems to be on the 3rd floor. He runs through the dungeon using his special bullets to defeat the monsters, while Emily returns to Ursa's shop, where she sees Ryota's cart. A girl named Enya informs Emily about the situation, while Eve listens to their conversation. Meanwhile, Ryota reaches the 3rd floor of Silicon and finds Rosa lying on the ground. Suddenly, a monster appears, but he realizes he's out of special bullets. We see Emily and Eve chasing after Ryota, and Emily says they have no choice, adding that Ryota reminds her of her mother. In a flashback, we see young Emily with her mother, who defeats a monster to try to save other adventurers. She checks how the adventurers are doing and tells them to be more careful when exploring dungeons. She picks up the thread the monster dropped and starts spending time with them, enjoying their company. One day, an adventurer tells her to run because a stray dragon is coming, but she decides to fight it. She defeats the dragon but falls to the ground. Emily gets worried, but her mother says there's nothing to worry about and asks her not to make a big deal of it. She asks if the others are okay, and Emily tells her they are. That makes her mother smile, and she tells Emily to take them to safety, because she doesn't want her items to turn into lost items. As Emily carries her back, her mother warns her not to be reckless in dungeons. And then she dies. Back in the present, Emily thinks Ryota is a hero like her mother, because he does his best to help others. So now she believes it's her turn to help him. Ryota runs from the monsters, trying to shoot them with regular bullets, but it proves useless. He keeps running and finds Emily and Eve chasing after zombies. They offer to take care of Rosa, while Ryota handles the strays, showing him an empty box. Emily and Eve distract the monsters, while Ryota shoots at the lost zombies, causing them to drop fire bullets. Ryota says he'll take care of it. Later, Race sees them coming out of the dungeon with Rosa. He's worried because Rosa is in bad shape, but Ryota tells him not to worry. Then he uses a bullet to heal her. Ryota reveals that the white bullet is actually a healing bullet, and Rosa's condition improves instantly. Race thanks Ryota for helping them. Ryota is very happy they managed to save her. Emily sees an image of her mother as he smiles. Ryota is surprised that Emily came up with the idea to bring the lost zombies to him, but Emily says it was nothing. She just copied what she saw him doing. Ryota thanks Emily and Eve for saving him and offers to cook for them. But Emily refuses, saying they should go home because she wants to be the only one who cooks for him. Ryota receives a new batch of watermelons and asks Erza to evaluate them for him. But Eric suddenly appears, saying she can help him evaluate them right away. She takes a bite and immediately tears up from the refreshing, sweet taste of the fruit. The other people gather around to try it too, and Erza quickly offers to make an exclusive contract with Ryota. He's very surprised by the product's popularity and happy to have another reliable source of income. Erza knows the watermelons drop on floor 5 of Telulu and asks Ryota if he got his license, revealing that it's required for anyone going to floor 6 or higher. This applies to all dungeons, and she explains that there's one license every 5 floors. She says that if he doesn't get the license, merchants won't be able to buy his products and items from higher floors. Ryota then goes to another building and asks how he can get the license. The man asks about his achievements, and Ryota mentions that he regularly cultivates watermelons on floor 5 of Telulu. The man isn't that impressed, but shows Ryota a melon from floor 6 and says he'll turn it into a lost item, and if Ryota can defeat it, he'll earn the license. But the man warns that monsters from floor 6 are on another level, totally different. They wait for the melon to transform, which turns into a metallic slime. Emily observes that the creature's body is immune to blade attacks, but Ryota decides to test if this slime can handle his S-rank strength, but it's not very effective. He then tries using his weapon by setting the slime on fire, and right after that a freezing bullet. He ends up shattering the slime, and explains that he caused an extreme temperature difference to make the metal brittle. Emily is impressed. The man is impressed too, and Ryota receives his license. The man notes that in his 10 years as an examiner, he's never been so impressed before. Ryota starts thinking about how he can get even more drops, and suddenly asks Emily for help. A few days later, we see they bought a giant tuna for 1.5 million pilos. This tuna here was a bit off. They leave it outside, waiting for it to turn into a lost item, and it transforms into a giant gorilla. Emily is already traumatized just seeing another gorilla, but Ryota starts shooting it with his freezing bullets. He climbs on the gorilla and takes it down easily, and Emily is very surprised to see him defeat the gorilla so quickly. The gorilla drops another weapon, and Ryota gets excited to use them akimbo style, thinking it'll make his combos a lot easier, but Emily worries about what will happen if he turns into a villain. Back at the Swallow's Gratitude, Ryota notices that Erza is a bit distracted. She mentions there's a strike going on. She says rice only drops on floor 6 of the Silicon Dungeon, but Aldeberg's group that occupies that floor demanded higher prices for the rice, or they'll start refusing to sell to them. Ryota decides to check it out, but ends up running into Neptune along the way. Turns out he's there for the same reason, mentioning this isn't the first time Aldeberg's group has done this, so he plans to destroy the floor with everyone on it, which will kill everyone. But Ryota asks for a chance to resolve the situation. He goes down to floor 6, and some of Aldeberg's guys tell him to leave. He draws his weapons, so the men call for reinforcements, preparing to fight him. But Ryota calls out for 2 bullets that combine, and all the men suddenly fall asleep. Neptune shows up suddenly, asking what he did, and Ryota explains that if you fuse 2 healing bullets, they become a tranquilizer bullet. We then see Ryota practicing with his 2 weapons, experimenting with different bullet combinations. He discovers many different effects, and Neptune is impressed with him and ends up carrying all the men out of the dungeon. Ryota is noticed by another man and soon meets with the head of the Secro dungeon, named Clint. Ryota asks what he wants, and the chief asks for help in a battle for a new dungeon against the neighboring city of Atero. He mentions that the dungeons in Atero drop a lot of meat, but a new dungeon appeared halfway between the 2 cities, which drops both meat and vegetables, so he wants to claim it. Ryota asks why it's important to know which city owns the dungeon, And Clint replies that every time a drop is purchased, the city collects a tax. So he says this is extremely important for the city's economic health. Clint apologizes for losing his temper and eats a handful of sugar to calm down. He mentions that dungeon ownership is usually decided by the percentage of meat versus vegetables, but since this one is split 50-50, ownership will be decided by who gets more rare items. He heard about Ryota's insane rare item drop rates, and so he wants his help, saying he'll be well paid even if they lose. But if they win, he'll receive a tax exemption. Ryota explains the situation to Emily, and she's impressed that he was invited to explore a new dungeon. Ryota tells her to come with him, but she says she won't be very useful, only for Ryota to insist that she comes along, and the two head to the new dungeon. Ryota finds it odd that the wilderness is so empty, and Emily says it's because everything ends up turning into lost items. She notes that it can be exhausting to travel between cities, so she draws a bean sprout on the ground, saying they're a source of encouragement, hoping to lift the spirits of anyone struggling. Ryota joins her by drawing his own bean sprout. That night, Emily sets up camp, and Ryota is shocked that she's carrying such a big tent. She tells him to go get some water, and suddenly Ryota hears a bunch of clattering noises inside the other tent. When Ryota returns with the water and enters the tent, he finds the inside fully furnished, with an amazing dinner made by Emily. Ryota wonders how she managed to carry all that, but she simply says she put everything in her backpack. Though she did notice it was a bit heavy, Emily even makes dessert, saying this is their first trip together. So she went all out, and Ryota feels very lucky to have her by his side. Emily gets ready to burn the trash, saying she doesn't want the garbage to turn into lost items. Ryota is surprised that even trash can turn into lost items, and Emily says the ones born from trash are particularly strong, and they're different from the monsters they originally were. But Ryota gets very interested upon hearing this, and puts the trash outside, waiting for it to transform. And then it really does turn into a monster called Frankenstein, and Ryota shoots at it. Emily observes that it's not enough, so Ryota combines 2 fire bullets, creating a huge inferno, and then he checks the drop. The next day they leave a carrot outside, which transforms into a slime. Ryota has a new green bullet. The slime dodges, but this is his new homing bullet. So Ryota gets all excited about this new addition, but Emily worries that he's becoming even more dangerous, and they arrive at Selen, the new dungeon that appeared between Sekro and Hetero. There are a lot of people around it, and Ryota thinks it's probably because both cities sent people there. They see a huge pile of trash, and Ryota wonders how this could be safe. They then see a girl using hellfire magic to burn all that trash, and Emily is impressed by how strong the girl's power is. But another pile of trash quickly forms. Ryota then sees that the girl is exhausted. He recognizes the look in her eyes is the same he used to have when he was completely overworked in his past. They approach the girl, saying she needs to rest, but she says she has to keep going before a lost appears. She tries to cast her magic again, but fails and ends up fainting. The next day, Ryota notices that Celeste is not feeling well. Celeste reveals it's because of the magic storm and says she's nauseous, but she'll feel better once it passes. Ryota decides to look for a bigger house, so they won't be affected by magic storms. They check another house, and Celeste immediately feels better. Since the owner says it was built to block the effects of magic storms, Emily asks about the rent, and the owner reveals it's 400 pylos a month. Emily and Celeste think it's too expensive, but Ryota decides to accept it because he wants a home that can make his family smile, and Ryota notes that it's almost time for the Harvest Festival, so they need to collect rare items, those on Urza's list, and look for the rare monsters of Telulu. On the 7th floor of Telulu, Ryota finds the captain with the other rookies. The captain starts crying, saying he's very proud of them because they've become stronger. The rookies are happy they followed him, but Ryota thinks they were brainwashed. They find a pink slime, and Ryota tries to shoot it, but it survives and becomes immune to his attacks. Celeste asks him to stop, saying you can't defeat a slime alone because it becomes invincible when it's about to die and no longer takes damage from the last person. She uses a fire spell to defeat it and tells Ryota they should fight and only focus on the finishing blow. Another slime appears, and Emily attacks while Ryota finishes it, making it drop a mountain of onions. Ryota realizes it's easy to deal with slimes if they work as a team, and they start talking about what to eat for dinner, when suddenly Ryota is hit and falls back. He realizes the monster is not a regular slime, so he concludes it's a rare monster. Celeste reveals it has the ability to reflect damage when it's close to dying, so they have to wear it down carefully. Eve tells them to leave it to her. Since she's fought one before, she attacks the monster and Ryota shoots it, allowing them to defeat it. It drops a gem, and Celeste explains that it can reflect all damage when equipped. He decides to sell it to Isa, who immediately recognizes it as a rare item called the Mud Lacrima, and she pays 3 million pilos for it. Ryota goes to Nihonium, where he defeats a red skeleton that drops a new seed that boosts his energy. He knows energy is used for magic, so he starts wondering how he can learn to use magic. Ryota buys an item worth 3 million pilos, while Celeste reveals that people usually learn magic by leveling up, but she knows he's stuck at level 1. The magic fruit allows him to learn a random spell when consumed, so Celeste tells him to eat it, but Ryota leaves it on the ground, waiting for it to transform into a lost. It ends up turning into a metal orb, and he approaches it, which slowly takes his form. Ryota fights against himself. It has 80% of his stats. He throws the creature and shoots it, creating a hole, and it drops a magic fruit. And Celeste comments that it's the same item, but Ryota says it's different, and starts eating it. After a while, Ryota tells Emily that now he can use 2 spells. He has the first one, known as a wind cutter, and Emily wants to know about the second, and Ryota tells her it's strange, saying he'll have to test it on a slime. Celeste burns the baby slime, making the bigger one angry, and Ryota uses his backup spell. The slime is about to attack Emily, but he kills it with his bullet, delivering the final blow. The slime drops a lot of potatoes, and Ryota reveals the spell applies his drop rate to any monster he defeats. He thinks it's kind of useless, but Emily disagrees, saying she leveled up after defeating the monster, so he decides to use it to help them gain experience. Ryota returns to Urza's shop, where we see a girl named Alice asking the captain if she can join his party. Urza tells Ryota that Alice's max level is 2, so other adventurers do not want her in their groups. The captain is about to let her in, but Ryota stops him, saying he wants Alice to join his party, since he knows the captain will not treat her well. Urza tells Alice that Ryota's group is the best in the city. The captain walks away, and Ryota receives his group. They check Alice's stats, and Ryota sees they are terrible, but tells her to start leveling up anyway. They enter Nihonium, where Alice says she was born in a dungeon. She points out monster locations, and they see a group of skeletons. Ryota is impressed she can detect monsters. He uses his restraining bullet and tells her to defeat them. She levels up, and they leave the dungeon to check her stats again, but they still look bad. Ryota knows that is her max level. Alice says a being called Bone wants her to return. They go back inside. She points to a skeleton and says it wants her to defeat it. She beats it, making it shrink, and tells Ryota Bone will fight with them now. They go to Tululu, where she says a monster called Giggly is calling her. Bone becomes a human-sized skeleton and fights a slime. The slime wins. After defeat, the monster becomes a small slime and also becomes her pet. They return home, where Ryota introduces Alice to the others, and everyone welcomes her to the family. It is time for the Harvest Festival. Ryota and Emily walk through the booths. He buys her a bell, and she attaches it to her new hammer to carry it anywhere. Alice takes them to a strange stall selling boxes. The vendor says a monster that gives a lot of XP appears when defeated. The boxes spawn these monsters, so they can use them to level up. Ryota decides to try. They place it down, and it turns into a rat. He uses his restraining bullet to limit its movement and casts a reserve spell. Emily crushes it, and it drops a power-up bullet. Ryota tries it. An effect appears, but nothing happens. He wonders if it is broken, but then fires a normal bullet and sees it is stronger than usual. He concludes the bullet powers up the next shot. They return to town where people panic. A Lost has appeared and is about to attack a girl. The group tries to defeat it, but it grows with every hit. Ryota sees it absorbs their attacks. Neptune joins them. Knowing they need help, his allies cast a spell and give him wings. He flies up. Ryota traps the monster and casts a strong energy spell, defeating it in one hit. The girl thanks Ryota for saving the town and says she wants to be an adventurer. He encourages her to work hard. Celeste returns from the dungeon, and Ryota introduces his group. Neptune tries to recruit him, but Ryota declines. As they enjoy the festival, Alice guides them to a spot where she feels monsters. Celeste thinks it is the arena, where fighters face losts and compete for a prize. Ryota decides they should join, picking Celeste as his partner since she knows a lot about monsters. In the arena, the crowd cheers for them. They fight a slime. Celeste uses her Hellfire spell, and Ryota finishes it. He praises her and says she is an important member of the team, which makes her very happy. That night, Celeste shows a rare item they won in the arena: fireworks. They play with them and enjoy the moment. But after using the item, Alice suddenly loses consciousness and walks away, saying someone is calling her. Ryota stops her, and she wakes up. He asks her where the voice is coming from. Alice points to Nihonian, and she says they need to investigate the place tomorrow, as it's already getting late. The next day, Ryota meets with Clint, who informs him that monsters are not dropping anything in the dungeons. He reveals this has never happened before, and that he's starting to worry, since he doesn't know how long it will last. Clint asks Ryota to return to Telulu with his group, where they see a pair of adventurers complaining about the situation. Eve orders Ryota to kill a slime, as she wants to eat a carrot. Ryota thinks the slime won't drop anything, but shoots himself, and to his surprise, it actually drops a carrot. So they start wondering why nothing is dropping for other adventurers, and Ryota remembers that someone in Nihonian was calling for Alice, and Nihonian is a dungeon where nothing drops for other adventurers. So he thinks of a theory and quickly runs out, heading to Nihonian. On the 4th floor, he finds a mysterious girl, thinking she must be the reason why the monsters aren't dropping anything. He concludes she is the dungeon master, so he shoots her, but the bullet goes right through her, and she kicks him away. Ryota realizes his attacks don't work against her, and wonders how he's going to defeat her. He tries using his special bullets, but they also go through her. Nothing seems to work, and he gets kicked again. Even his fusion bullets have no effect, and he thinks he has no chance of winning. But suddenly one of his shots manages to hit her. As the boss removes the bullet, Ryota realizes that his homing bullets are effective, so he instantly loads his gun with homing bullets. But when he fires, they still go through the boss's body. However, when she tries to attack, she gets hit by the homing bullets. Ryota keeps firing, and when the boss tries to attack again, her hand is destroyed by the bullets. Ryota explains that the moment she tries to attack, her body becomes physical, and the homing bullets will lock onto her instantly. Ryota runs out of homing bullets, but he's already dealt enough damage to weaken her, and now he can track her movements. She attacks with a headbutt, but he gets up and finishes her off. He ends up fainting, and when he wakes up, he finds Emily calling out to him. She reveals the drops are back, saying he saved everyone, but she wishes he wouldn't push himself so much, not wanting to see him get hurt. As they're about to head home, Ryota notices a ring dropped by the dungeon master. They leave the dungeon, and Emily wants to tell everyone that Ryota saved the day, but he prefers not to get that kind of attention. The rest of the group arrives, saying he was very reckless, and Ryota agrees not to do things alone next time. The next day, Ryota returns to Nihonium to try out the ring he received. A group of skeletons approaches, and he easily eliminates them, and the ring seems to have the ability to create crystals. He meets with Margaret's group, and they mention that her idea of selling rings won't work, since they only drop from dragons, and Margaret isn't strong enough to defeat them alone. They check Margaret's stats, and we see she's at level 94, but all her stats are rank F. Ryota feels bad for her, so he gives her one of his crystals, and lets her level up. And we learn that his ring has the power to turn monsters he kills into XP crystals. Margaret is shocked to see that her stats also increased along with the level. Ryota decides to try again, giving her a bunch of crystals, and she goes up to level 96, with all her stats improving again. Ryota thinks Margaret must be a late bloomer, and that her hard work is finally paying off. Margaret is very happy and wants to repay Ryota, but instead he quickly runs away. He buys all the carrots and bean sprouts in the city and plans to level up his group. He explains how the ring works to them, but Eve refuses to let him destroy all those carrots. Ryota promises to get even better carrots for her, so she agrees to wait patiently. The mountain of carrots and bean sprouts ends up turning into lost monsters, and Ryota and Emily defeat the monsters with their weapons, while the girls take turns picking up the crystals. At the end of the day, they check their stats, and we see that everyone is at max level. Celeste is very happy to see she finally has a drop stat above rank F, and she thanks Ryota for everything. Emily finds it a little sad that Ryota can't gain any experience despite working so hard, but Ryota says the experiences he's had in this world are more valuable to him. He thinks that now that everyone has reached max level, it's time for the family to move on to the next stage. The next day we see the group walking, and they're starting to become quite famous. They go get their dungeon licenses for Emily and Celeste, and we see them pass the test easily. Alice wonders what they should do next, and Ryota suggests they split up to figure out how each one can make the most of their talents. We then see the group hunting in various dungeons, and after a week, they get together to see how much each one was able to earn. Emily reveals she managed to make 160,000 pilos per day, while Alice and Celeste made about 100,000. Eve reveals she made around 120,000, but she ended up eating all the carrots, and Ryota can't believe she managed to eat so much. Ryota goes on to reveal that he earned about 2 million per day, and Emily asks what he plans to buy with all that money. Ryota ends up buying the magic cart for everyone, and we see it has a special feature that allows it to transfer items directly to their home, so they'll never run out of space while hunting. Ryota meets with Erza, and he notes that it's a hassle for him to constantly make several trips to bring all his items. So he makes a deal with her to take care of managing all the items. Emily welcomes her to the family, and they decide to throw her a welcome party. But Ryota wonders why Neptune showed up too. Margaret also arrives to thank him once again. And Emily invites everyone, saying the more the merrier. The cart merchant also shows up, and Clint comes to thank him for defeating the dungeon master. Ryota can't believe there are suddenly so many people, but he just thinks about everything he went through with them, and how lucky he is to have come to this world. And our story ends here.